leader, Greg McCants from E Street Prepared. His dial-in, a 34.505. Ryan Otis in the right lane from Street rear-wheel drive. Dial-in 37030. Starter, we're ready. Okay, so Ryan, the 32nd driver to qualify here in the challenge run against that top qualifier, Greg McCants, the Hoosier-clad E Street Prepared WRX. His reaction time of 5:43, but Ryan also turning in a real nice 5:86 in that Chevy Corvette Z06, running on street tires there. So as a result, Ryan did get a 2.5 second head start at the tree, and he comes back first by 0.8 of a second. So Ryan Otis going to move over to that left lane with an 0.8 of a second advantage. And McCants will take the Subaru over to the right lane, needing to make up 0.794. So 0.8 separating these two drivers. McCants, a 389 red light, and your top eliminator eliminated just like in the ladies challenge. Both top eliminators taken out in the very first round. So McCants dropping out here early, leaving an opportunity to move on up. Unfortunately, a 398 light there for Greg. And Ryan Otis will move on to the next round in that Chevy Z06. He had a 6:24 reaction time for Ryan. All right, so Ryan Otis moving on to the next round after taking that green light there. And that brings us up to the line with our next pairing. Paul Kozlak in the left lane in the Chevy Corvette 35960. His dial in for Andrew in the right lane in the Mazda Miata, a 34671. Starter, we're ready. Oh, Blossomman, as he revved the car up, it started to creep forward on him, and it just kind of slowly rolled through those lights. A 224 red light for Andrew, and the automatic win there to Paul Kozlak, who, by the way, threw down a 588 light. But unfortunately, Andrew running an R2 there, so I guess it's a deep prepared Miata. And yeah, I wonder if that was a reflection of the problems that he had at the line. He's lost drive there on the right side. So any folks who are available to go give Andrew a hand over there on that right side course, I'm sure he'd appreciate that. And the win going to Paul Kozlak with that 588 green light, and unfortunately the red light taking out Andrew, and Paul moving on to the next round of the challenge. All right, so we have those times cleared out. They're getting Andrew clear of the finish line over there, and we'll get ready for our next pairing. Kinch Rendell up in that STC Honda Civic. His dial-in is a 36811. And Ricky Crow in the right lane in that FRS, his dial-in, a 37280. The starter, we're ready. All right, 688 on the right for Ricky. For Kinch, a 547. So a nice light there for Kinch in that left lane. Picks up a 1/10 of a second. He did have to sit there for 4/10 while Ricky Crow took off in the Scion, but now Kinch working that Honda through the left side course. Can he reel the FRS back in? Looks like the right side will be back first. He is by almost a half a second. 0.477 advantage for Crow as he moves over to the left lane. Almost a half a second advantage for Ricky as he moves to the left side course. Kinch is going to bring the Honda up on the right. Needs to make up almost a half second. .548 on the left, 539 on the right. So two really nice lights from both drivers. Really no advantage for Kinch there. He's going to have to earn this one out on the course. He needs to make up a half a second over there. Oh, we got a cone down on the left side for Ricky. So he has now handed the advantage to Kinch. He has a 1.5 second advantage. Ricky was back first, but a cone is going to give the win to Kinch Rendell. So Ricky had it covered on raw time, but the cone is going to give the victory to Kinch in the Honda, and he will move on to the next round of the challenge. All right, bringing up the next pair of drivers. On the left side from R1, Darren Seltzer in the Raptor, 31.832, and Mark Andy in the Mazda on the right, 37.553. Starter, we're ready. Those drivers away. Right side, a 5:07 light for Mark Andy. And for Darren, a 6:37. So Mark Andy really pushing the lights there as he takes off on that right side in his RX-8, running street tires in C Street. And then R1, Darren Seltzer in that F-Mod car, winning his class this weekend. Left side's back first by 23 thousandths of a second, so virtually a tie between these two drivers. 23 thousandths of a second advantage for Darren as he takes the F-Mod car over to that right lane. And Mark Andy now needing to make up 23 thousandths of a second. He threw down that 5:06 reaction time on his first launch there, so he certainly was not leaving it at the line. But let's see now as these drivers get ready to go for their next runs. Another good light for Mark, 5:62. Darren, a 6:38. So the advantage now would seem to have swapped over to Mark Andy as he made up with reaction time the lead that Darren had. But Darren is on that right side course. It has been faster for almost every driver by a couple tenths. So let's see now. Of course, Darren also did not have any heat in those F-Mod tires. Now he does. Can he take advantage of it? A big drift as he comes into the finish, and he will be back first by 4 tenths. Oh, but we've got workers running on the right side. The F-Mod car picks up a cone at the finish. Yes, he did drift too wide there. Last cone before the finish lights. And the win will go to Mark Andy as Darren had the victory on raw time, but with the cone, the victory going to go to Mark Andy in the Mazda. Okay, our next pairing is up at the line now. From B Street, Lane Borg in the Chevy Corvette. His dial-in is a 37,791. And for Nick in the right lane in the S2000, a 36,652. Starter, we're ready. .680 for Lane. For Nick, a 5:71, so a tenth better on reaction time for Nick. He was spotting Lane Borg a 1.1 second advantage based on their dial-ins. Nick Bourne running the S2000 in STR this weekend, and he was your class winner there. And we got a cone down on Lane on the left side, so Lane making things difficult for himself. He's running B Street, so a street-tired Chevy Corvette over there on that left side, but he has a cone. Right side's back first, so for Nick, it's a 2.1 second advantage due to the cone down in the left lane. So Lane now going to need to make up 2.1 seconds as he comes up to the right side. So Nick's going to bring that Honda up on the left lane with a 2.1 second advantage. .631 on the right side for Lane, 798 on the left side for Nick. So Lane picking up a tenth and a half with the better reaction time, which would have been enough to cover the difference on raw time that Nick had, but he gave up 2 seconds with a cone. So that's the difference between the two drivers now. Lane unlikely to come back 2 seconds faster on the right side. He's going to have to rely on a mistake by Nick, and Nick running a tough battle there. Well, wait a minute now. Oh, we got another cone down on the right side. Lane was back first and seemed to have made up the difference, but now a cone is going to take it away again. So another cone for Lane is going to give Nick the win. And Nick will move on to the next round of the challenge with the S2000. Okay, computers ready for our next pairing. Left side, street, front wheel drive, Trevor Jones. Dial-in is a 37850, and SSR Gary Thomason, 34860. Starter, we're ready. Oh, those drivers away. How about for a 6:45 matching reaction times? Both drivers 6:45. How about that? Now, what is not similar are these two vehicles on course right now. You got the front-wheel drive Focus ST. Oh, Trevor Jones in that left lane, a 3-second head start. I'm sure he's thinking, is that really enough? Because he's got Gary Thomason in that 2008 Viper in the right lane running on Hoosiers. But Gary, I'm sure, saying, hey, I got to get this big car through this course. One of 4 SSR drivers in this challenge rounds. That's how close the competition was. And Thomason is back first by 0.3 of a second. 0.3 advantage for the Viper, as now Gary's going to move over to that left lane. Trevor Jones going to come up on the right lane. So Thomason, a 0.3 advantage now, is one of our 4 SSR drivers to make it into the challenge. Just terrific and close competition there at the top of the order in SSR. Wow, a 5:13 light for Gary. For Trevor, a 5:39. They had matching reaction times last time and almost did it again. But Gary not satisfied with that 0.3 advantage, knowing that Trevor is over there on that faster right side course. Now we got a cone down on the right side right at the end of the straightaway. Trevor got it turned in a little too much there, picked off that turn-in cone. So now Gary with a 2.3 second advantage as they wake their way into the finish lights. Right side is back first. Trevor had it covered on raw time, but the cone is going to give the victory to Gary Thomason. So Gary's going to move on in another cone on Trevor. So the win there going to Thomason in the Viper. and he'll move on to the next round. So we continue to work our way through the top 32. The next pair at the line, Mark Hill, 36,984 is his dial-in in the Mitsubishi Evo, and Jonathan Lagarde in the right lane, 36,652. Starter, we're ready. A perfect 500 light for Jonathan in that right lane in that S2000 makes Mark Hill's 534 look like he was sleeping, because Jonathan throws down a perfect 500 light. That is incredible. Let's see how that works out for him out there on the course, though. Jonathan running an STR Honda S2000. Mark Hill running in the bump class. Oh, we got lots of smoke pouring out of that Honda on the right lane. Hard to tell if that is normal or not. In STR, it might be. Absolutely expected, so we'll see. Right side's back first by 0.8 of a second. It is not smoking now, but it sure was in that back right-hand corner. A perfect 500 light for Jonathan, and he comes back with an 0.8 advantage, as now Mark Hill will come up on the right side, and needing to make up 0.8 of a second. Mark Hill running STU in that Evo this weekend to take the win there in the bump class. A 446 light, so yeah, he got punished for that perfect 500 by just being a little too quick on the trigger there on that left-hand lane, and really hard when you got dial-ins that are so close together. Those two dial-ins only 0.3 apart. Hard to just focus on your side of the tree. So Mark Hill in that white Mitsubishi Evo, and your STU winner, bump class winner this weekend, will move on to the next round of the challenge. And we just finish up those two there. We got a cone on the left side to pick up there by the finish lights. Mark Hill taking the win there with the red light on the left lane. Okay, got our course reset, computers reset. Left side, C Street, Jeff Stewart in the Nissan. 37,553 is his dial-in, and for Steve in the right lane in that Subaru BRZ, 37,280. Starter, we're ready. .544 light for Steve in the right lane. For Jeff on the left lane, a 651. So Jeff Stewart running C Street, winning that class by about 2.5 tenths. That 370Z, getting about a 3/10 head start. Steve O'Blennis there in the BRZ. He also won his class by about 1.5 tenths. So two class winners running heads up here. Left side's back first by not quite 0.3 of a second. Left side is back first by 0.277. 0.277. The advantage for Jeff Stewart as he moves over to the right lane. Steve going to bring the Subaru up on the left side, needing to make up 0.277. Boy, this left lane is getting some folks here, as just like in our prior round, Steve, a 472 red light taking him out. Jeff Stewart going to move on to the next round with a 600 reaction time, gets him the green light. Once again, the differential between those two drivers, just 0.3 of a second. Again, maybe fooling the eye of the driver there in the left lane. So really got to focus on your side of the tree and your side of the tree only. So we'll let those two drivers finish up there. I think Steve saw that red light and just tried to fly around the course here at the finish. Picks up a couple cones. Going to take us a minute to reset the finish lights, or the finish cones over there on the left side, before we bring up our next pairing here. Street prepared B class on the left side. Brian in the Honda. Looks like they're ready over there. Okay, great. So dialing on the left side for Brian. 35,384 for Troy Acosta in that Porsche Boxster. 34,116. Starter, we're ready. A 489 red light for Troy in the Porsche Boxster. Going to eliminate him, give the automatic win there to Brian in the CRX. So red light on the Porsche. And that eliminates Troy here from the first round and gives Brian the automatic win. He'll move on to the second round of the challenge. So we'll let Brian finish his run. He wouldn't be aware of that. He actually took off from the lights first. And Troy, leaving about a second later, pulling off the red light. So the win there goes to Brian, and he'll move on to the next round of the challenge. Had a nice 5.75 reaction time there for Brian, and that green light gives him the win. All right. Up at the line, one of the guys that we said was in the top three of our point standings, Paul Russell from KM. His dialing a 31,626. And then Glenn Hernandez running street tire rear-wheel drive in the Z06, 37,030. Starter, we're ready. A 4:57 red light for Glenn Hernandez, and I guess that was maybe one advantage for Paul, seeing as he had to sit there for 6 seconds while Glenn took off from the line, but he had plenty of time to see that Glenn had a red light. All Paul had to do was get the green light, and he gets the automatic win. So we are flying through challenge rounds here, but red lights, of course, aren't the way we prefer to do it, as we want to see the competition between the top drivers of the weekend here. So the win going to the kart, as Paul Russell has a 725 green light, and he'll move on to the next round of the challenge. All right, so we got those two cars finished. Brings up our next pairing. We've seen this car before, the Toyota Spider. Back up this time, Eric Peterson behind the wheel. 37,824 for Eric, and for Pat Salerno in the right lane in the Porsche. 34,860. Starter, we're ready. A 534 light for Pat. Eric Peterson, a 571. So two good lights for both of those drivers. Pat, your winner there in SSR, the Hoosier tired super stock cars, running just an incredible battle. Four of them making it into these challenge rounds. That's four of them separated by less than 0.3 of a second. In this case, Pat Salerno taking the win by just a half a tenth. By just a half a tenth. So that's how close it was between first and second in that class. Eric Peterson, your winner there in SR. Oh, we got a cone down on the right side. So Eric Peterson is back first by 0.2 of a second, plus a cone on Pat. So it's a 2.2 second advantage for Eric now as he moves over to the right lane. And Salerno going to have his work cut out for him now, as he's got to make up for that cone and the 0.2 that Eric had him covered by just on raw time. Eric running a E-Street configuration there on that MR2 and taking the win in the SR class. Yeah, Pat thought maybe he could just get a perfect light and that would help reel in the 2 seconds he needed. a 496 red light. So not far off, but just a little bit too quick for Pat. Eric Peterson will move on to the next round. All right, here we are up at the line now. Eric Strelnick's unofficially your points leader at this point, with McCants getting eliminated earlier. So Eric Strelnick's going to come up to the line in the SSM car. His dialing is a 33,706. Tony Savini from SRR in the right lane, 35,906. Starter, we're ready. A 566 light for Eric, a 656 light for Tony. So Eric picks up a 10th right there on reaction times. But with the dial-in difference, he did have to give Tony a 2-second head start. Both of these cars running on Hoosiers, so both drivers may be looking for a little bit of heat on this first run to get those tires to stick. Oh, we got workers running on the right side. We got a cone down on Savini on the right side. Strelnick's working his way into the left side. They make the turn in relatively the same, and the blast through the finish, 4 thousandths of a second. Strelnick's is back first by 4 thousandths of a second, but 2 cones now on Savini, so it's a 4-second advantage for Eric Strelnick's. They were a virtual tie coming across the line, but Savini picking up a couple cones, so it's a 4-second advantage now for Strelnick's. Yeah, Savini going to try the Salerno method there and see if he can just rip off a miracle light, but a 461 red light. Strelnick takes the green light, and he knows he's got the win. He is not going to put any extra heat into that car. He's got the win once he has the green light, so he doesn't have to complete the run. So Strelnick moves on to the next round of the challenge. Yeah, they did. Timing did ask us just to remind folks it's fine if you want to pull off, but we do have timing cords running between, here and the finish. So if you want to loop around, try to loop all the way around the finish area there for us, just to stay off those cables. So next pairing up to the line, Preston Jordan from STF, dialing a 38,598, and Vivek Goal in the right lane in the Z06, 34,860. Starter, we're ready. Those drivers away, a 708 on the right lane, a 664 on the left for the Focus. So Preston Jordan out there working the left lane. He does get a almost 4-second head start on Vivek. Vivek finishing second in SSR this weekend in that Z06. A nice drive from Vivek. I understand he's running that Z06 largely on the stock 100,000-mile shocks that are on it, so just an impressive drive, and one of our course designers this weekend. But it is Preston Jordan back first by 1/100th of a second. 1/100th of a second is the advantage for Preston Jordan. So a virtual tie between these two drivers after the first runs. So they switch sides now. And Preston Jordan with a .01 advantage. And he'll bring that Ford Focus up on the right lane. Vivek with the Corvette on the left. Those drivers away, and Vivek now would seem to have the massive lead as a 655 light compared to Preston's 7:33 light will wipe out Preston's 100th of a second advantage and give Vivek something around 500ths of a second advantage. But let's see how it turns out between these two drivers. Vivek is on this more challenging left side course. Most drivers a couple tenths slower over there. Let's see if that applies now. He's got the Corvette heading into the finish, and left side is back first. Vivek takes it by .170. Oh, but we got a radio call. Oh, okay, and then a piece came off of the right side, it sounded like. So everything's right. Vivek Gold takes the win there by .170. And Preston Jordan, they were just reporting something fell off of the Ford Focus out there on the right side course. So we'll just have the worker stations retain that. And so the win there going to Vivek Gold as he'll move on to the next round in the Corvette. So that completes our first 32 drivers. We're into the second round of the Super Challenge here at the Tire Rack Pro Solo. And as these drivers get lined up, we've got those times into the system. A heads-up Corvette battle in the Z06 on street tires. On the left lane, Ryan Otis's dial-in, a 37.030, and Paul Kozlak in the Hoosier-clad Corvette, 35.960. Starter, we're ready. A 5:59 light for Paul, a 5:73 light for Ryan. I don't know how either one of them got away with that, because those were some really nice lights. And they take off from the line now. Paul Kozlak running that A Street R car on the right side, race tires on the A stock car, the Chevy Corvette FRC, sort of the precursor to the Z06, and in the C5 model, and Ryan running an actual C5 Z06 on street tires, street tire rear-wheel drive cars. We got workers running on the left. So Ryan is back first by 3/10, but a cone is down on Ryan, so Paul is going to have a 1.7 second advantage as he moves up to the left side. So Ryan was back first by 3/10, but he had a cone down in that back far corner, so the advantage now to Paul as he'll come up to the line at a 1.7 second advantage. Those drivers away, a 681 for Paul, a 712 for Ryan. So Paul not taking any chances, still pulling off a respectable light there, even with a 1.7 second advantage. Ryan over there now on the faster right side course, but Paul not taking any chances, even with the cone on Ryan in the first runs. They work their way through the finish. Into that finish turn. Ryan does seem to have a pretty good advantage, but is it enough? It is not. Paul takes the win by 0.8 of a second, so Ryan made up about half of what he needed, but not enough. Paul Kozlak going to move on in the SRR car into the third round of the challenge. We got Kinch Rendell back up here on the left side, 36.811. And for Nick Barbado on the right side, 36.652. Starter, we're ready. .747 on the left side, 7:21 on the right. So pretty equal on reaction times for these two drivers. We got an STR S2000 on the right side and an STC Civic SI on the left. A heads-up Honda battle, both of them on street tires, running in street touring configuration. Let's see what happens with these two drivers as they work their way into the finish. Dial-in's only 0.2 difference, so Kinch really wheeling that car this weekend, and he continues to do well with a 2.5 advantage for Kinch as he moves over to the right lane, and Nick will move over to the left lane, needing to make up 2.5. 0.251, the difference between these two drivers, 0.251. The advantage now to the Honda in the right lane, 0.251. Oh, Nick gets a good chunk of it right here. He picks up 1/10.5 with a better reaction time. So now he needs another 10th out there on that left side course. Nick Barbado, a 5.40 reaction time to Kinch Rendell's 6.97. How about that? He was down by 2.5 tenths. He gets 1/10.5 just with the better light. And now he needs a 10th on that left side course. Any differential between these two courses because of water has seemed to have gone away. They both look completely dry. Now the difference is just at the times, and Nick makes it back first by 0.2 seconds. Barbado going to move on to the next round by 0.2 seconds. Margin of victory there for Barbado in the STR car. Mark Andy back up here in the left side. 37.553 his dial-in, and for Nick on the right side, a 36.652. Starter, we're ready. .614 on the left, 6:45 on the right. So Mark and Andy pretty equal on reaction times. Mark running the street tired Mazda RX-8 in that left lane does get a 1.1 second head start on Nick in the street-tired S2000. Nick also running that STR class, your STR winner this weekend. And Andy finishing second there in C Street. 29th qualifier overall. Times in, Mark did have a big adventure down there on that left side course. So Nick is back first by 1.9 seconds. 1.9, the advantage for Nick as he moves over to the left lane. Mark had a bit of an event there on that left side course when he got down to the far turnaround. So got a little bit of work to do here as he moves over to the right course, needing to make up 1.9 seconds. .865 on the left, a 5.76 for Mark, so good start for him there. Picks up 0.3 on the reaction time, but he's going to need another 1.5 seconds out there on the course. All right, let's see. Oh, we got a cone down on the right side. Nick had it covered on raw times anyway. 1.2 was the margin, plus a cone there on Mark Andy towards the end of his run. So the victory there going to Nick in the S2000. All right, we continue to work our way through the second round. Gary Thomason up on the left side with the Viper, 34.860 his dial in. Mark Hill in the Mitsubishi. 36.984. Starter, we're ready. .591 light for Gary, for Mark an 847. So Thomason having to give that all-wheel drive Evo a 2-second head start, but he's on those Hoosiers in the SSR car. Got some heat in those now, so we're going to see what he can do. Mark Hill running in the bump class in that STU street tired car, Mitsubishi Evo, working his way into the finish here. Who can power through first? It is Mark Hill back with a .785, so 0.8 is the advantage for Mark Hill. And he'll take the Evo over to the left lane. 0.8, the difference between these two drivers. And Gary now going to look to make that up as he moves the Viper over to the right lane. .785, the time for Gary to make up now on that right side course. All right, Gary, another nice light, 541. Mr. Consistent on these lights, 541. Mark Hill, not too shabby with a 603. And Mark does have that 0.8 advantage as these drivers switch sides. Gary now on that faster right side course, but it hasn't been 0.8 faster for most of these drivers. Well, let's see what he can do. They make the turn pretty equal into this final turn, and that's probably not good for Gary. Indeed, it is not. He gets 0.2 back, but it's not enough. Mark Hill will take the victory there by 0.6 of a second. So Mark Hill able to hang on to his advantage from the first runs to move on to the next round of the challenge. All right, we are halfway through round number 2. David Marcus, left side, 36,652, his dial in. Jeff Stewart on the right, 37,553. Starter, we're ready. .615 light on the left for David, 625 on the right for Jeff. So those drivers weigh pretty equal on reaction times. The C Street Nissan of Jeff Stewart getting a 0.9 head start on the STR car of David Marcus. Into the finish, right side is back first. 0.7 of a second for Jeff Stewart is his advantage. So the Nissan with a 0.7 advantage now as he'll take that over to the left side course. David Marcus going to bring the Honda up on the right with a needing to make up 0.7 of a second on that right side. All right, those two drivers away. 641 on the left, 625 on the right. So pretty equal again on reaction times for those two drivers. While they're out there, folks, we do have weather on the way. Now, we're going to be able to crank these challenge rounds through just as quick as we can. But please, a lot of wind and rain coming our way. We need everybody to make sure you have secured your belongings back there in the paddock, especially if you've got a canopy up of some kind. Take that down, or make sure you really have it weighted down, because we were told we have a big storm coming in here. Left side, Jeff Stewart is back first by 0.7 of a second, and so he will take the win, hangs on to that advantage. David, pretty much an equal run between those two drivers, as David not able to make up that 0.7 difference between the two. So Jeff Stewart in the Nissan moving on to the next round of the challenge. Brian up on the left side, 35,384. Jason on the right, 36,928. Starter, we're ready. Those drivers away, a 5.77 on the left, a 5.42 on the right. So good reaction times for both of these drivers. Brian Kuehl running in street prepared B in that CRX. I believe that's that street mod front wheel drive car that we saw Rachel Baker do so well in. And then Jason Frank in the STS CRX running in that right side course. He was the winner of that class this weekend. So again, folks, here we go. Big slide through the left side turn, but he is back first. Brian hanging it out there, and he does get back first by 0.02 of a second. So a virtual tie between these two drivers, 0.02 of a second, the advantage for Brian Kuehl as he'll move over to the right side lane. And Jason Frank will bring his CRX, dueling CRXs here, but his STS CRX need to make up 0.02 of a second. All right, those drivers away. 7.53 on the left, a 6.23 on the right. So Brian manages to more than double his lead. He picks up a 10th to add to the 0.02 that he already had. So Brian now also on that faster right side course. So please, everybody, if you're out here watching, just make sure that you have secured everything back at your pits. And especially if you have one of those easy ups or something up, don't underestimate the ability of a heavy wind to pick that thing up and not only destroy it, but throw it into other cars in the vicinity. So please secure those. Brian is back first by 1.1 seconds, and he'll move on to the next round of the challenge in the SPB car. Brian Kuehl taking the victory there. Left side in the cart, a 31.626, and for the Toyota, a 37.824. Starter, we're ready. A 6.10 light for Eric, a 6.19 for Paul. So equal reaction times here. What wasn't equal were the dial-ins, as Eric Peterson getting a 6-second head start on Paul Russell. Paul's used to that, having run these kart mod classes. Yeah, we're going to go into high-speed mode here as we try to click through these rounds of the challenge, try to get these drivers through and in the equal conditions here. Right side is back first by 0.3 of a second, so Eric Peterson does come in first by 0.3 of a second. Paul Russell will take the cart over to the right lane now, needing to make up 0.346. So the red light on Eric Peterson, a 4.99 red light. Wow. 4.99 red light for Eric Peterson. Had a 0.3 advantage coming into that round, but Paul Russell taking the win there with the green light. So we are going to, just as soon as Eric Peterson clears the course, we will launch these next two drivers with a 33.706 on the left and a 34.860 on the right. So we're just waiting for Peterson to clear the course on the left side, and then we will launch these two drivers. Starter, we're ready as soon as Eric is going to be clear here. It'll take us just 1 second here. And he is clear. We've got the timer set. We're ready. So Eric Strelnick had to face off against the, we'll call it the A stock Corvette in the first round, and now he's running against the super stock version of the Z06 in the second round. Can he eliminate two Corvettes in a row? We're going to find out, because he is trying to stay alive. Paul Russell just won his round. Eric needs to survive this round if he wants to hang on to his points lead for the overall championship here in the challenges. Eric Strelnick's a 5.79 reaction time to Vivek's 7.74. We've got some radio traffic, cones down on the right side on Vivek. Eric is back first by a half a second, plus a cone down on Vivek Goal, so that's 2.5 second advantage now for Eric Strelnick as he moves over to the right lane. So Eric came back first, plus the cone is going to give him a 2.5 second advantage now on the right side course. Also, everybody, we are going to do trophy presentations for today's event at the awards ceremony tonight. So in light of the incoming weather, we're not going to stick around here for the usual celebration. All right, those drivers away, a 6.09 for Vivek, a 7.38 for Eric. And Eric with a 2.5 second advantage made sure he got a green light there. So we are not going to stick around for trophy presentation after we conclude the challenge rounds here. We will do that tonight at the banquet. So please join us this evening at the Lancaster Event Center. Out there on the course, Eric Strelnick has a 2.5 second advantage because of a cone down. Oh, and we got workers running on the left. So another cone on Vivek, and Eric Strelnick will move on to the next round of the challenge, and that completes our top 8. We are back to the beginning of the order for the third round. Left side's dial in. 35.960 for Paul. For Nick, a 36.652. Starter, we're ready. Oh, Paul got a 494 red light. A 494 red light for Paul, so the automatic win going for Nick Barbado. So unfortunately, Paul just a little too quick on the trigger there. We'll take him out of this round. Nick Barbado going into the top 4. And just as soon as Nick clears the course on the right side, we'll be ready to go for our next pairing. But we do have to let these two just finish the finished trips. So Paul coming through there. And the automatic win there for Nick Barbado due to the red light. Dial in on the left side, 36.652. On the left, 36.984 on the right. Starter, we're ready. .734 on the left, 737 on the right. We got Nick Bajoran on the left. I am sure I am slaughtering his last name. So Nick's in the STR car on the left side in the S2000. And on the right side for Mark Hill in the Mitsubishi Evo. Pretty equal reaction times there. We got a cone down on Nick on the left side. But both of those drivers having pretty much equal reaction times. The dial in 3/10 to the advantage for Mark Hill, but we got a cone down on Nick on the left, so he's got a 2-second hole to dig out of. He gets back 3/10 first, but Nick has a cone, so Mark Hill's going to have a 1.7 second advantage as he moves over to the left lane. 1.7 second advantage. .658 on the right side for Nick. For Mark, a 8.63. So Mark a little leisurely on the lights there, but because of the cone on Nick, Mark does have the luxury of a 1.7 second advantage. He gives up 2/10 of that. Nick is going to have to find the other second and a half out here on this right side course. That is going to be a challenge. Working their way through that final slalom into the last turn, heading into the finish. Nick does seem to have an advantage, but is it a second and a half? It is not. He gets half of what he needed, but Mark Hill is going to take the win by 7/10 of a second. So Mark Hill moving into the top 4 against Nick Barbado. And now we've got that all cleared out. We got our next pairing up at the line. Dial in on the left, 37,553 to a 35,384. Starter, we're ready. .690 is the left side for Jeff Stewart, and for Brian Kuehl on the right side, a 677. Pretty equal again on reaction times. The dial-in's not equal, as Jeff Stewart in the C Street Nissan 370Z gets a 2-second head start on Brian Kuehl in that street mod front-wheel drive Honda CRX. So neither driver getting a big advantage there with reaction times. Going to rely on the runs. In Brian Kuehl's in first, though, by almost 1 second. It's a 9.5 advantage for Brian Kuehl. 0.954 advantage. 0.954 advantage for Brian Kuehl. We're going to need second there, Howard. Oh, we're good. Okay, we've got those entered in here. Yeah, if you could hold that for just 1 second there, Howard. So the advantage now going to Brian, 9/10 of a second, almost a full second advantage for Brian in the left lane. We're ready. 609 for Jeff, but a 548 for Brian. So Brian not satisfied with almost a full second. Switches over to that left side course. And Jeff Stewart putting down a pretty nice 609 light, but Brian throwing down an even better one. So Brian with a 1 second advantage. They make their turn in. Oh, but Brian wide there at the finish. Right side is back first by a second. Jeff Stewart makes up the differential. Yes, he makes up the differential by a 1/10 of a second is the margin of victory there for Jeff Stewart to move into the final 4. So Jeff Stewart coming back from behind by a 1/10 of a second. Okay, Paul Russell up on the left, 31,626 to Eric Strelnick's 33,706. Starter, we're ready. So these are the paired up right now. This may determine the overall championship for the year. Eric Strelnick and Paul Russell, unofficially your top 2 points earners. So the winner of this round going into the top 4, the other one eliminated. This could determine who is going to be the overall ProSolo Super Challenge winner for the year. Paul Russell a 570 light, Eric Strelnick's a 587 light. So pretty equal on the lights, but Paul Russell is back first by 1/10 of a second. Paul Russell back first by 1/10 of a second. Eric Strelnick now bringing his car up on the left side has got to make up 1/10 of a second. .581 on the left, 654 on the right for Paul. So Paul had a 1/10 of a second advantage coming into this. Eric got it almost all back with the better launch. However, Paul is over on that right side course. This round, folks, is likely to determine the overall champion. Oh, we got a worker running on the left, so Eric would appear to have a cone down on this left side, and Paul seems to have a lead coming into the finish anyway. Paul's got it covered on raw time, 8/10 the margin of victory, plus a cone down on the left on Eric. Paul Russell moving on to your top eliminator round with an 8/10 advantage just on raw time, plus the cone. So that brings us to our final four, folks. This is it. We're going to put one of these two drivers into our top eliminator round here at the Tire Rack ProSolo finale in Lincoln, Nebraska. 4 drivers left out of our top 32. Paul Russell coming into this event, 3rd overall in the points, would seem to now be in the driver's seat, so to speak, for the overall championship here in the Super Challenge. But first, let's get through this round. Nick Barbado on the left side, 36,652. Mark Hill on the right, 36,984. Starter, we're ready. $621 for Nick on the left side in that Honda S2000 running STR this weekend. $729 for Mark Hill running STU in the bump class in that Mitsubishi Evo. Nick Barbado giving a 3/10 head start to Mark Hill in the Mitsubishi Evo. STR versus STU. Working their way back here to the finish, making the final turn. Left, no, right. It's hard to tell because it's only 15 thousandths of a second advantage for Mark Hill. 15 thousandths, the difference between those two drivers. So a virtual tie here, 15 thousandths advantage for Mark Hill. But he's moving over to that left side course. Barbado going to bring the Honda up on the right side course. 15 thousandths the difference between these two drivers. A 600 light for Barbado, a 756 for Mark Hill. So now the advantage is all Barbado's. He got a 1/10 and a half better on reaction times. That more than wipes out the 15 thousandths advantage that Mark Hill had. So now Nick is on that faster right side course. Mark Hill has got to get the job done on this left side course. Looked to me like Hill had an advantage on the right until he got to that final turn, pushed out a little bit wide, seemed to have trouble gathering it up. Let's see what happens this time around. They're coming into the finish. Right side is back first by 4/10 of a second. Barbado going to go into the top eliminator round. Nick Barbado takes the win by 4/10 of a second. And Mark Hill will stick around for that 3rd and 4th place runoff. And that is going to take us to our top eliminator. One more spot to our top eliminator round. Who's going to run against Nick Barbado? It's either going to be Jeff Stewart or Paul Russell. And unofficially, according to our points totals, Paul Russell is sitting as your overall ProSolo Super Challenge champion for the year. That is, of course, unofficial, but according to our points, he appears to have at least 125 points at this point and the opportunity to earn some more as he continues through these rounds. So we'll have Jeff Stewart back up here in the C Street Nissan 370Z. His dial-in is a 37,553, and Paul Russell in the kart mod 31,626. That is going to be a 6-second head start for Jeff Stewart. Paul Russell used to seeing that, so not going to be a big surprise to him there. But Jeff Stewart going to get a 6-second head start based on their dial-ins. And one of these two drivers going to go on to run against Nick Barbado in our top eliminator round. The other one going to run up against Mark Hill there in that all-wheel drive Evo. We're going to try to click these last two rounds off as quickly as we can. And so just a reminder, we got the banquet this evening at the Lancaster Event Center. Hope everybody will join us there because that is where you're going to get your trophies for this event. In addition to the season-ending trophies at the Lancaster Event Center, Reception 5:30, awards at 7 p.m., including the awards for today's event. Those dial-ins are set. 6 seconds between these two drivers is the differential in the dial-in starter. We're ready. .618 light for Paul, for Jeff Stewart at 7:15. So I'm sure Paul will be comforted that he got an entire tenth of those 6 seconds back with the better reaction time. The rest he's going to have to do flying around that course in that cart with the sticky tires. And I'm sure Jeff Stewart is saying, hey, couldn't you make it more like 7 seconds or hold Paul there a little longer, because he has really worked his way through these rounds of the challenge. They move into the finish. And right side is back first by 0.6 of a second. So Paul Russell is back first by 0.6 of a second. Jeff Stewart going to take the Z car over to the right lane, and he's going to be looking to make up 0.6, .626, the difference between these two drivers. .659 on the left for Paul. For Jeff, a 6:17. So Jeff gets a little bit back with the better reaction time. Not very much. He's going to have to get 0.6 on this right side course. It has been 2 to 3 tenths faster for most drivers, but definitely not 0.6 for most drivers. Let's see what happens now as they work their way into that middle slalom. Boy, Paul really has reeled in a lot of time to make the final turn. Z-car still with an advantage, but can he get to the finish first? He does, but he only gets back 4 tenths. Paul Russell wins by 2/10 of a second. So Paul Russell going into your top eliminator round against Nick Barbado by 2/10 of a second. So Jeff Stewart, we'll see him back up here in the Z car in just a minute against Mark Hill. That will be a C Street car against an STU car for third place overall. And then we're going to see Nick Barbado and Paul Russell in the top eliminator round. And Paul maybe just putting an exclamation point on what we believe is his overall points championship for the year in these challenge rounds, and doing it in a cart. So Paul Russell in the top eliminator round against Nick Barbado, and not going to have an easy trip there, as Nick Barbado also an experienced driver in these challenge rounds and had his own share of success at these. Oh yeah, so this is an interesting fact of both. We got 4 of the drivers here in the final rounds here. 2 of them, Jeff Stewart and Nick Barbado, part of that GT Academy, and both did really well, as you all probably saw on television, with I think Jeff finishing 4th overall and Nick 5th overall. So 2 of those GT Academy drivers showing up here and doing really well through these final rounds of the challenge. We're going to see Jeff up here in just a moment against Mark Hill in that Mitsubishi Evo. So just a reminder for folks that we'll do the awards presentations for today's event at the awards banquet this evening, with trophies starting there at 7 p.m. at the Lancaster Event Center. Please do bring your registration sheet from Timing. Has a little ticket on the back side there. They'll be collecting those at the door for the banquet this evening. And in the meantime, folks, please secure your belongings back there in the paddock. We are being told that there is some significant weather moving in here. Could be extremely windy, and you want to make sure you get any kind of canopies or any other objects that are subject to being blown around secured and put away. And, of course, windows up and all that good stuff as well. Right, so just to reiterate, there won't be any trophy presentation here this afternoon. As soon as we're done with these challenge rounds, we'll wrap things up here, and we'll do all the trophies, not only for the season, but for this weekend's event at the Tire Rack ProSolo Awards Banquet at the Lancaster Event Center this evening. Okay, here come our two drivers. Dial in on the left side for Mark Hill. It's going to be a 36.984. He's going to give a 6/10 head start here to Jeff Stewart with his dial in of a 37.553. Starter, we're ready. .659 on the right side, 8:56 on the left. So Mark Hill giving up 0.2 of a second to Jeff Stewart, with Jeff having the better reaction time. Add that to the 6/10 head start he gets with the lower dial in, and Jeff Stewart would have an 8/10 advantage, and he's on this faster right side course. So starting off in this first round seems to be the advantage of Jeff Stewart. Let's see what Mark Hill can do over here on the left side course. Makes a turn into the finish. A little bit of an advantage on the right side for Jeff, and he is back first by 0.7 of a second. 0.7, the advantage for Jeff Stewart as he moves over to the left side course. Mark Hill moving over to the right. So Jeff Stewart, 0.7 advantage in the Z car. .609 on the right for Mark, 6:59 for Jeff on the left. So Mark getting a 0.5 with the better reaction time, but now he has got to get 0.7 on this right side course. And then we'll be to our top eliminator round with Paul Russell and Nick Barbado. This is our third and fourth place runoff out there on the course right now. Jeff Stewart sitting there with a 0.7 advantage, but working his way in to the final turn. Looks like the right side has an advantage. Is it 0.7? It is not. Jeff Stewart will finish third overall by 0.4 of a second. So Mark Hill able to make up 0.3, but not enough. Jeff Stewart will finish third overall. All right, so Nick Barbado coming to the line. Of course, Nick Barbado, I was just reminded, was our overall winner last year. So I think we got our overall winner this year, Paul Russell, running against last year's overall winner, Nick Barbado. So pretty cool final round here with these last two drivers. Both running Hondas, although quite a bit different here, as the Nick's going to be coming up here on an STR Honda S2000. And then, of course, Paul running that Tony Kart with the Honda motor there in KM. Dialing on the left is a 36.652. Nick's going to get about a 5-second head start on Paul Russell's 31.626. Starter, we're ready. A 5.74 light for Nick. For Paul Russell, a 7.12. So much better light there for Nick Barbado. He gets about a 1/10.5 on top of the 6 seconds that he had to run down that straightaway before Paul even got the green light. Paul taking off around that course now. Got heat in those kart tires, so critical to making that thing work, but he has got them. How are Nick Barbado's street tires? We're going to find out here in just a moment. As they come through the finish, right side will be back first by a 1/10 and a half. 0.144 the advantage for Paul Russell. 0.144 the advantage for Paul. And Nick will move the Honda over to the right course, needing to make up about a 1/10 and a half. So 0.144 separating these two drivers. I'd have to say that for several drivers was the differential between these two courses. This could be very close between these two drivers, folks. Last runs, here it is for the season. .743 for Paul Russell, a 5.70 for Nick Barbado. Nick got exactly what he needed with the better reaction time. This is now a dead even race between these two drivers. Paul Russell had a 1/10 and a half advantage after the first runs, but Nick Barbado picks up a 1/10 and a half with the better reaction time. So now he is on that faster right side course. Can he take advantage of it and get through the finish? He does seem to have a bit of an advantage, but Paul had a nice acceleration through the finish, and he comes back first. Paul Russell takes the win by 0.2 of a second. So Paul Russell takes the win there in that final turn by 0.2 of a second. Congratulations. I believe that not only is Paul Russell the winner of our Tire Rack Pro Solo Finale Super Challenge, but he will be your overall points champion for the year. And we may be getting some well-earned donuts there for Paul Russell in the card. So congratulations. Thank you so much to Tire Rack for the season-long sponsorship here of the Pro Solo Series, and thank you to the national staff for a great season across the country from coast to coast. And we will look forward to seeing everybody this evening at the Pro Solo Banquet at the Lancaster Center. That is where we will do trophy presentation, not only for the season, but for this weekend's event. All of the trophies will be presented there, including our usual celebration